What's up? This is Mark Lopes from Metal Church of Ross the Boss Band. Let us pray. And you're listening to Aftershocks TV. And don't forget to keep it fucking metal. Yeah.
Okay, we're back here on Aftershocks TV with Matt and Tom. And so let's get into Tom. Obviously, 2023 is behind us. We're here to start 2024. But before we move forward with the new year, we definitely want to talk about and celebrate and promote our top records of 2023, which is always a difficult thing, man. There's always so much good music. It's really tough. I had to sort of sit there and put together a list. And, I was doing my top 30 list. I'm part of this thing called the Doom Charts, which is a really cool, site. I don't know what you want to call it, but it's a website. And it's just got basically journalists from all over the globe that have, whether they have podcasts or they have blogs or they have websites, whatever it is, that kind of come together every month. And we submit our top, usually they're mostly underground bands, but of course you can nominate any band, even popular bands, bands that are on major labels and so forth. But it's really within that sort of, the metal, heavy rock, stoner, doom vernacular. And it's a great site that these guys do. And they put together it's a great thing because they keep it with just the music. There's no politics involved in it. It's from around the globe. These are journalists from around the globe that come together. They put together their lists. And then they obviously put everyone's list together and they rank them from whoever voted. They have a system that they do, and it's phenomenal. So anyway, usually we put together, like I said, anywhere from 10 to 15 albums a month. But at the end of the year, we put together about, 20, 25, 30, albums. And sometimes you don't realize how many good albums are put out in a year, because of just the way music is these days, and everyone's releasing records and they're here 1 minute and gone the next. And then you kind of go back. It's like, I forgot that album was out this year. It seemed like it was out 3 years ago.
Yeah, that's right.
But because it's just so, the attention span is so short, and this music's coming out just one after the other. It's hard. It's really hard to put together 30 records. Normally you'd think back in the day, 30 records, you couldn't even come up with 30 records a year that came out. No. Now it's like, it's probably do top 50. It's crazy. But anyway, so when I was going through those and trying to, whittle it down to 5 here, man, it was so tough just to put together 30, to whittle it down to 30, let alone 5.
Yeah.
So we're going to do it though here. We're going to get our top 5 records of the year up and going. And Tom, why don't I'm going to bring up yours here first. You start us off on Tom Brennan's top 5 of 2023 with Aftershocks TV.
Let me preface this conversation by the fact that when it comes to music, generally, I'm really, really narrow-minded. Like if it doesn't have, if it's not heavy, I almost don't want to know about it. Seriously, like my Apple Music, my iPad, it's 99.9% rock and metal. It just is. But when it comes to the rock and metal genre, I'm wide open. So this is what you're probably seeing across here. I even said to Matt today, I said, Matt, do we have to put it in order? Can we just give 5? He said, no, put it in fucking order. I said, all right, it's in order. So anyway, these are my top 5. And I'm going to, so probably now people are wondering which is 1 and which is 5, right? So I'm going to go from the Obituary side, first of all. Okay. Obituary, I saw this band live twice in the last 18 months. They are a phenomenal band. I think the heft is the right word to use for Obituary. I think it's just perfect. Live, they are just a phenomenal band. There's a buddy of mine over in Ireland going to see them next year. I don't know who they're playing with, but I just said, his name is Alan Foskin. So, hey, Foz. So I said to Foz, you're just going to love it. So amazing band live. Metallica, I'm still actually breathing that one a little bit, to be honest.
Sure.
Because it's just long. It's a little bit bloated in places. I think that word's been used for Metallica for a couple of years right now, but I think a return to form, very well produced, great tracks in there, maybe a tad too long, but overall it makes the grade for me. Let's jump into Overkill. I mean, Overkill are just incapable of releasing bad records.
Yeah, absolutely.
Just incapable, right? And Blitz and I saw Overkill once in Jersey about 5 years ago in the Starland Ballroom, obviously a New Jersey band, 2,500 seats, whatever, completely sold out. Just a great band, great energy. They look like they're 25 up on the stage, and this album is phenomenal, really well produced as well. Now we're getting heavy. Heavier than Obituary is Dying Fetus, right? Fuck. This is probably my favorite death metal band. Look at the cover on that. I mean, make them beg for death. I love it. And I saw them live twice, actually. Once in Dallas a couple of years ago, and I saw them on their recent tour here in Charlotte, I think back in May of last year.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Unbelievable band, heavy as fuck, right? If you don't like death metal, you're going to hate this, because this is like next level extreme. But here's where they don't get credit for people outside of the genre of the musicianship is just, I can't even describe how good it is. They're just unbelievable musicians with those time changes and those beats and timing, just phenomenal. And my favorite album of the year coming from Dying Fetus is Winger. That's what I just said. I'm wide open. I'm wide open when it comes to rock and metal. This, first of all, I'm a Winger fan forever. I saw Winger for the first time about 2 months ago here in Charlotte. Small club, 500 people. Talk about stellar musicians. I mean, Rod Morgenstein is classically trained. I think he teaches at Berkeley. Go figure. Kip Winger scores symphonies. Go figure. And he's doing another one. So these guys from a musicianship side, they're just as good as anybody on that screen and beyond. But this album is something else. I just think it's a phenomenal return to form. The last album is, I can't even remember now, it's 6-7 years, whatever it was, maybe more. I'm never great on timelines. I get fuzzy on that. But there's a song on that, the very, very last track on that, and there's an outro. It's about 7 minutes long. There's an outro on that Reb Beach plays, and it's probably his best guitar solo. So they would be my top 5. But Matt, before you jump in, I do have honorable mentions. I want to jump super quick on the honorable mentions, right? But I'm not going to talk about them. I'm just going to mention them. Suffocation, new one. Joel Hoekstra, all over the place. Greta Van Fleet, New Extreme, 3 songs that I don't like, but I think it's a great album overall. KK Priest, Metal Church, Cannibal Corpse, and Elegant Weapons, which is the Judas Priest, say it for me, KK Downing, other guy. God damn, my brain's gone. I'm having brain farts today. But anyway, the Elegant Weapons album. Richie Faulkner, thank you. That I think it's just a brilliant metal album. So they were my honorable mentions, but they're my top 5.
Nice, great. Well, great honorable mentions and top 5. Yeah, I mean, Obituary, you just never can go wrong with Obituary.
No,
they've become. I remember, I was never, when I first became privy to death metal in the early '90s. I had friends who were into death metal. I mean, I gotta say, the old school guttural stuff. It took me a while to really understand and to kind of. It was kind of forced down my throat because I had these friends that would play all the time. But the first I remember death metal band that I liked was Obituary because I loved Jard Tardy's vocals. Right. There's no one who's sung like him. I mean, obviously he can't sing. He can't sing like that at this age, but he's still singing great. They've become more of a death thrash band.
They have,
and they always had that groove metal, bit to them too, which I loved. They're always a little more groovier than your traditional death metal band.
So heavy, Jesus, they're so heavy.
Absolutely. So I'm a love Obituary. You can never go wrong with them. The Metallica record. Look, I'm a guy who's anyone who knows me, who's listened to Aftershocks and any of the shows we've done over the years, knows I'm a guy who usually likes to get on Metallica. Just for for whatever reasons, a lot of it's just me being a whatever snobby, whatever it is. I've always just been disappointed in Metallica over the years, but this record, not at all. I mean, this to me it's just a James Hetfield like solo record to me though. I mean, it's all him. I think it's all him on this record. I will say I was not thrilled with a lot of the leads with Kirk Hammett on this record.
He's not a great lead player though.
He's just not. He's just not a good player. He's not a great player, period, in my opinion. No. Hetfield lyrically, vocally, and just his riffs. I love it. I love just the mid-tempo. It's just he's just to me he's just the greatest up with Tony Iommi. He's the greatest riff masters ever as James Hetfield. So yeah, I'm a fan of the record though. I think it's their best record they put out in I can't remember since the probably the old days. You know what I mean? Really, it's the best new record they put out in years. Overkill, as you said, with Overkill, you can never go wrong. They're right there with like Obituary. Just been doing it year after year. They're incapable, like you said, of putting out bad music.
No, that's right.
Just great thrash records every time they put out a record. Never changes. Just one of the most consistent bands that are been out there for years. Yeah. Dying Fetus, man. It's funny. I remember first hearing Dying Fetus when I was in college. I had same thing. Some friends of mine that were in a band that were in a death metal band, and I remember reading about them in the back of this one zine. and they were getting ranked, just as like one of the best newer bands and albums. And then these guys who I was friends with just raved about them. They were just like in love with Dying Fetus, out of Virginia, I believe, right? Yeah, been out of Virginia. And it's amazing that here it is 6 years later, that this band is now just
Insane.
one of the top death metal bands that have ever existed. Especially, they weren't part of that early 90s. They were more in the mid to later 90s. And yeah, they're yes, just another great, like I said, consistent band that puts out great album after great album. And now Winger. It's funny that we have Winger and Metallica here on the same list, and Winger's ranked ahead of it. You told that people that backed out in the early 90s, with that whole Beavis and Butthead. Can you imagine if Stewart had a Dying Fetus shirt on instead of Winger, man? I don't know. It would have.
Who knows?
Who knows what could happen? But listen, my favorite record from the 80s, that 80s hair metal period, was that first Winger record. I mean, that's one of my most played records that I've ever played. And it's one of those things, I ain't gonna lie, for years, like I said, being from the States, I became a teenager. When I was my early teens, Winger was everything to me. When I became a little later, listening to hardcore and all this crazy metal stuff, I didn't want to tell anybody that I liked Winger. You know what I mean? I just was embarrassed, They were like a guilty pleasure thing, but not anymore. I mean, I'm so glad that they're getting the recognition they deserve, as great as you brought up before. Just classically trained musicians. One of the reasons they got shit on for so long too. Look, whether you like the style of music or not, and like they used to defend themselves when Metallica was throwing the dart at Kit Winger's picture there in the video, Nothing Else Matters video, is these guys are just because they were studio musicians, and it's just like, I don't know why there's always been this negative connotation towards studio musicians. The same thing was like a band like Toto. Like, I love the band Toto, right?
Sure.
Same thing. They were giving recognition as a great band, no matter how many huge hits they had, because they were all made up of studio musicians. So fucking what? I mean, Winger to me was their thing, and they used to say it. Kit Winger used to say it all the time. Look, let's go head to toe with all those Metallica guys in terms of musicianship, and they can't touch them. Rod Morgenstein, like you said, classically trained progressive drummer. Kit Winger, like you said, putting out he got nominated for a Grammy of classical music, right? Some years ago. Red Beach, we talked about this off the just shooting shit. We could do a whole segment or a whole
Red Beach or Kirk Hammett. I mean, seriously,
give me Red Beach, and
there's no comparison.
Freaking there's none.
Zero.
I mean, he's such an underrated guitarist for a Beach. So, I mean, I don't want to hear it, and like I said, yes, this is such a great record. I remember sending this to my brother, and being like, dude, you got to check out the new Winger. It still holds up. Kip's voice holds up better than any out of these classic, Docket and all them. I mean, his voice is still there. I am sad that they're going to stop putting out music. This might be their last record from what he said. I get it. They do so much other stuff, I get it. You know what I mean? But I'm just so glad if this is the last record, it's a great one. And for all you Winger haters that want to still think you're back in the early 90s, go fuck yourselves. Winger's a great band. I don't care what anyone says. They put out great music for all these records. So anyway, great list, Tom. Let me go ahead. I'm going to do mine real quick here before we move on here. I'm going to go ahead and put up mine here, okay? My top 5 records. Well, let's start from the same thing, from the back there, Witch Skull. Okay, so Witch Skull, if the people haven't heard of Witch Skull before, great stoner metal band out of Australia. I just wish they could. It sucks about bands in Australia. They just got nowhere to tour. It's so hard,
that's
so
a great album.
Expensive to travel. And the Serpent Tide, they just picked up where they left off from the Driftwood Cross that came out in 2020. If you love stoner metal in the vein of those classic Iommi Sabbath riffs, man, Witch Skull, no one does it better than them, in my opinion. These days, Witch Skull, the Serpent Tide, great record. Right after that, Patriarchs in Black, My Veneration. That's obviously features drummer Johnny Kelly. More famously is the drummer known from Typo Negative. He's in Quiet Riot now. He's in a gazillion bands. He's with Kill Devil Hill. That was another great record that was out this year.
Yeah, great.
My Veneration. This is such a great record. It's got so many different vocal styles. That's what I love about it. Their first record was pretty doomy and stonery and traditional Sabbath style metal stuff. This record's a little bit different. They got some more up-tempo stuff. What they did, and I see a lot of bands are doing this, going back to the whole stoner and doom bands having these harsher vocals. I think what a lot of bands are doing now is, instead of adding an extra guitarist to get heavy or to switch up the riffage or whatever it is, they're just switching up the vocals a little bit differently. They're making it a little more. They're just basically diversifying a little bit. So you're going to hear on this record, you're going to hear a lot of harsh vocals. You're going to hear a lot of clean, good old traditional, vocals in the vein of Ozzy or
Yep.
Eric Wagner from Trouble, that type of stuff. But you're also going to hear they got even guest vocals here on Daryl McDaniels from Run DMC. They have just one song that he kind of guests on. There's a vocalist on here that plays on a few songs here called Mark Sunshine, who's out of New Jersey. If you want to talk about a great frontman and a great vocalist, check out Mark Sunshine and what he does on this record. He's now with Unita, the old stoner rock band that John Garcia used to front. So Patriarchs and Black, My Veneration. This is a great record. Check it out if you can.
Hey, Matt, super quick on that. I was actually chatting with the bass player, Eric Morgan from Patriarchs.
Yeah, okay.
So I asked him to come on the show, so let's talk about that offline.
Oh, absolutely.
And he's from New Jersey, so I met him up there. So yeah, I have a text from him right there. So
great. We'd love to get him on. We'll definitely talk to him. Absolutely, man. Next record, Formula 400. Great heavy rock class, almost like a Thin Lizzy meets Sabbath meets, just a classic metal, thing. It's definitely got that Thin Lizzy dual guitar thing going. Okay. Formula 400, Divination, great band out of San Diego. This is their sophomore release. Just good old, just hard driving, heavy rock, hard rock, just excellent stuff. Check them out if you haven't. Great record, Divination. Now these two were my top two records of the year. Restless Spirit, they're out of Long Island, New York. After Image is the name of the record. It's their third release. This band is just getting better and better. They got on Magnetic Eye Records, which is a great underground, heavy, hard rock, doom, stoner rock label. They have a progressive stonery. I mean, they're just a great young band that is just going to start taking off. Just get used to hearing that name, Restless Spirit, After Image. And of course, my number one album of the year is one of my favorite bands of all time, if not my favorite metal band ever, Prong, State of Emergency. Really, they harken back to their early 90s sound on this one, which I've been waiting for them to do for years, and they finally did it. Tommy Victor moved back to New York, so he got some of that old school, thrash and crossover sort of groove metal stuff back into the sound. They do a great cover of Rush's Working Man too. Yeah. If you haven't heard that, they slow it down a little bit. They speed it up at certain parts. Just a great take on it. I love it. It's my record of the year, Prong, State of Emergency.
And that's Mr. Aiken's album of the year too. So
yes,
good company.
It's a CMS Network favorite. There's no doubt. That's what it is. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, great album.
So there we go. Those are our top 5 records of the year here for Aftershocks TV. And so let's to close this episode out, Tom, we're going to go ahead. We were talking about, just mentioned before, about Winger, turned into sort of being a guilty pleasure of mine, that I was afraid to admit during the 90s and early 2000s to people. We're going to talk about our favorite guilty pleasures in rock and metal. We're going to pick 1 or 2 guilty pleasures. And before we wrap things up here, that's our, we do our last question of the episode. So go ahead, Tom. I also see you got Manowar on your background. We're going to get into them the next episode. That was also maybe some of people's favorite guilty pleasures as well. Mm-hmm. Some Manowar, for obvious reasons. We'll get into them, like I said, next episode. But go ahead and give me your favorite guilty pleasure to here to end the show.
Okay. My favorite guilty pleasure is autograph.
Okay, okay.
But I see, first of all, like the guilty pleasure almost has to be wimpy 80s stuff. It can't be some extreme. It has to go back into that genre. But I would say autograph. Mm-hmm. Not that I'm a huge fan, not that I have all their shit going on. I don't, right? But they're just a band that I always took notice of. I think they're just throwaway bubblegum rock with just great hooks, great songs. Obviously, they've had a shit ton of changes over the years. And the original singer, Steve Plunkett, I think, he's no longer with them. And I don't know the name of the new singer, quite frankly. But their new album is pretty good. Jimmy Bell of House of Lords fame currently is on guitar with them. And he is a fucking monster shredder. So anybody who doesn't know the name Jimmy Bell, look him up. He's as good as anything else. He's like an unknown Nuno. He's actually that good. Currently playing at House of Lords, which I'm a big House of Lords fan too. But I'm not a big autograph fan. Not that if I was, I wouldn't care less. But I'm not a big fan. But they're my guilty pleasure. I'll dip into a little bit of autograph from time to time. So yeah, I would say that.
Now, is it more the OG autograph to turn up the radio? And,
Yeah, that probably
yeah,
is. But some of their
okay.
new stuff, the new album is pretty decent, and the one before that, again, I can't remember the name of it, some Fuse or something. But yeah, they're just a decent band. If I'm not going to necessarily seek him out, but if I hear it come on a shuffle, I go, oh yeah, fuck it, I'm into this, and I leave it on. But yeah, I'm not going to put them up there with the greats of, they're never going to release an album of the year for me, but there's something I'll just dive into from time to time and have a little bit of fun with, I guess.
Awesome. Very cool. So our autograph it is. Yeah, mine are two bands. They're kind of connected together because they were, one was signed by one of the guys from the band and they were on the same label and so forth. I'm going to the 90s now.
Okay.
We're talking late 90s, in that period where there's a lot of new metal coming out, right? On MTV. You had your TRL, what is it? TRL or whatever it was. A band that a lot of people love to hate. These are two bands a lot of people love to hate, and I would say deservedly so in certain respects. First one is Puddle of Mud. I love their first two records. I'm a big fan of those first. Nothing after that. After that, I think they really just went to shit. But those first two records, man, I love them. I actually do. At that point in time too, they were just they were that band that came in that went back to sort of just a heavy rock, grunge rock sound. When a lot of bands were doing more of the rap metal stuff and the new metal. And I just think those first two records from head to toe, almost all the songs are really catchy. They got great hooks, and are they
back on tour again or something? They tour recently?
Well, yeah, they tour all the time, but it's was it Wes Scantlin, the singer? I mean, he's just that guy that keeps getting. He keeps showing up to these shows. It's one of those things when you go to see a Puddle of Mud show, I think people almost want to go to see if they can film, him fucking up, because he usually comes out one show on a tour where he'll play half of a set list because he's too wasted, or he goes, he's, like I said, he's definitely got some things he's got to work through. That guy, he's definitely a pretty polarizing guy. You either love or hate him, and most people I think hate him. But they're able to still tour. I don't know how they're still touring. People are still actually paying money, because every time you go, you're really taking a risk that this guy's going to walk off stage and you're not going to get your money's worth. So, but their hits are big enough that people are still willing to do it, obviously, And then, of course, the band that signed them and the label was Interscope. And, of course, Fred Durst and Limp Bizkit. I do like Limp Bizkit. Limp Bizkit is a guilty pleasure of mine. Now, the thing is some of the older Limp Bizkit stuff, the Nookie and stuff, not so much that stuff. They put out an album around 2000, I think it was around 4 or 5. It was an EP called The Unquestionable Truth Part 1. Not many people even know about it.
No,
and it had there was no rap in it. There was no DJ stuff. It was just a straight up heavy, like a metal rock record. And like I said, it wasn't goofy lyrics. It was actually a pretty serious record. It was at the time when Fred Durst was basically getting thrown under the bus for starting a riot at,
I remember.
At Woodstock, and he was really kind of shunned. And he was one of those guys that he was an annoying guy. You saw his face everywhere. You had the stupid Yankee hat on and red hat. People were saying he was the antithesis of what people wanted to see. He was sort of like that was like the hair. They were like the Poison of the '80s, is what Limp Bizkit was to the '90s. And so, he was basically getting blackballed and shunned, and no one wanted to hear anything about Limp Bizkit. And he wrote a pretty angry record, 6 songs. And I'll tell you, man, it's still in my rotation to this day. I think it's just a good, angry, pissed off record with no frills. It was just straight up guitar, bass, drums, and vocals.
Nice.
And I wish they would go back and do that, because that to me was the best stuff they've ever done. Because I wasn't really into a lot of the bubblegum and the poppy stuff and a lot of the rap stuff. But
it's all right.
But Limp Bizkit is definitely a guilty pleasure of mine. I think I'm going to go see them this year too. Absolutely,
they're still touring and they're still headlining. I saw Fred Durst recently, and he has like a blonde wig on and shit. So he's like a bit of a fruitcake. But
I think what he's doing is he's making fun of himself. He used to take himself way too serious.
100%. Yeah.
So now he's doing the opposite. And I think that's what's been able for the band for them to become likable again, or people to like them that maybe didn't before, is because he's poking fun at himself, as he should. And but yes, dude, they're selling out arena. I mean, they played a Madison Square Garden. Right. I mean, so they're a hot item.
But that goes back to what we spoke about earlier. They're just a band that had this kind of 4 or 5 years of great success, and they had the Mission Impossible theme music and all that kind of thing. So they made their mark very early. And then any band of today that had two. Is all you need is 2 or 3 big albums, or even 2.
Yep,
you can tour
2.
forever on. You can tour forever. I mean, you could. That's another segment we should talk about. Take a band that had 2. Look at Guns N' Roses.
Guns N' Roses, System of a Down. I mean,
and that came out in 1986. Lose Your Illusion, arguably, are weak. A couple of songs in each one, bring them together. Forget about the rest of them, Chinese Democracy and whatever. They're a prime example that a band that played to 50,000 people per night based on one album that came out in 1986.
Exactly. No, you're right. They're the greatest example of that. Exactly. Like you said, you could tour two really high-selling, great albums.
That's all you need.
You're set for life.
Look at Def Leppard. Def Leppard are still touring Hysteria to this day. They do. I mean, credit to Leppard. They do play songs. I saw them on the Motley tour, the arena tour last year, I think it was. Yeah.
Okay.
And they did play 3 or 4 songs off the newer album, which I don't think is a great album. Some people do. I think there's great songs on it. I don't think it's a great album. But credit to them. They opened up with the first song from the new album, which is a great track. But they're touring Hysteria still. Hysteria Adrenalize. They're still at it.
Sure. I mean, that's what people want to hear. They know that's what people are paying to go see and hear. So, that's just doing a good job making your customers happy, really, at this, if you want to say that. Yeah. So, all right, great. Well, another great episode, Tom. Anything else you want to say here before we wrap it up for this week?
No, I'm just, we're getting some traction here. We're making some tweaks as we go on the audio and the tech and the visuals. So we're going to constantly make those changes and get a nice, well-oiled machine. And then we're back next week. And I've got a couple of gigs coming up that we can talk about that before I go. And after I go, I can review that. I've got Tool are actually playing this month here in Charlotte. So looking forward to seeing them. Again, you don't see Tool, you just watch them and listen. I don't want anybody talking to me like, fuck off, Tool are on. They're like watching Rush. I just want to immerse myself in that. And here's me saying I've never seen him. I have seen Tool before.
Okay.
Actually, did they play at did I say I didn't see an Ozfest? I think I did see an Ozfest in Ireland. Jesus, my brain's not working today. But Ozzy was headlining. I don't know if it was called Ozfest, but Ozzy was headlining. And then he and Tool were second. And then Black Label Society, I think, were playing too. But Ozzy couldn't play because he couldn't make it over from the UK for whatever reason.
Oh, really? Okay.
You can fill in the blanks on that. But Tool ended up headlining. So I saw them at an Ozfest, I think, back in Dublin, 15 years ago. And I wasn't into them enough to get them at the time. I remember loving the show, but their last, 3-4 releases just got me hooked. So, looking forward to it.
Yeah, it looks like they played at Ozfest. I think it was in '98 they played at Ozfest.
That's when I saw them. God damn,
and I believe they played also as well in 2002. It looks like they played.
Okay, probably 2002 I saw.
That's probably the one, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Wow, man, who hasn't played Ozfest? Jeez. Great.
Well, it went on for about 16 years, so
I know, right? Great. All right. Yeah. So AftershocksTV.com. Go ahead and check out what we got going on. Just keep up with all the episodes. You can go there, obviously, the CMS Network. And we will see everyone next week here at Aftershocks TV. Thanks for listening and viewing, and we'll see everyone next time.
Next time.